Hey guys, what's up? It's Marissa. I'm back for another booktube video, and today I am doing my December wrap-up, which includes 16 books and 2 different readathons. Now, if you haven't been watching some of my videos, I participated in the Reindeer Readathon, which there's a TBR video for that, so I will link that up in the cards. And then I also was participating in the Magical Readathon, which is put on by G over at Book Roast. Sorry, the Reindeer Readathon was put on by Break Even Books, Donna Sandoku, Savvy Writes Books, and Melted Books, and I will link all of their channels down below. My bad, I forgot to say that. So anyway, I participated in both of those readathons. The Reindeer Readathon finishes at the end of December, and then the Magical Readathon continues on into January, and it's actually an open-ended readathon, so you can do it whenever. You can wait till next year to do it if you really want to. I mean, that is if G still has it open at that point, but anyway, not my point. So, I did read a total of 16 books, which is pretty middle of the road for me, pretty good. So I'm happy with that number. So let's go ahead and get into the books that I read. First one was American Royals by Katharine McGee. Did end up giving that one a 4 stars, and that was for the Reindeer Readathon. And that one, if you don't know, is about what would have happened if George Washington had become the first king of the United States and if his royal line had continued. It is like kind of a cutesy contemporary romance, and I actually surprisingly really enjoyed it. I did end up listening to this on Audible, and I thought the narrator did an excellent job voicing the characters and bringing the story to life. That is Archenemies by Marissa Meyer, of course, and if you don't know what this series is you are following superheroes set in a contemporary setting in Gatlin City, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's Gatlin City. But this is the second book in the Renegade series. Duh, having a brain fart. Okay, so this is the second book in the Renegade series, and you continue to follow your main characters. There's good characters and evil characters, and again, if you didn't hear me talk about the first book, there are a lot of the characters, all the characters are just gray. They think there's good and evil, but in reality, they're fighting for the same things, they just don't realize it. So this book continues that, and it ended up being really good. I did end up giving this one a 5 stars, and again, this one was also for the Reindeer Readathon. So the next one was another audiobook, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six. And that I ended up giving 4 stars, and that was also for the Reindeer Readathon. And that book ended up, this is another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. And I also read I also listened to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. While I think they're good stories, they're rich stories, they're immersive stories, they're just not my thing. It's just like, what was the point? It's almost like she has a knack for taking these stories and turning them into something that could be a real world thing, but it's not actually a real world thing. And I think that's why a lot of people like it, but that's part of the reason why I don't. It's just, again, it's just not my thing, not my personal preference. I did end up giving this a 4 stars just because it was very beautifully written and I enjoyed some parts of it. I just wasn't really for me. So the next book that I read was a graphic novel, and this was The Dresden Files Downtown by, of course, my very favorite author in the whole wide world, Jim Butcher. And I kind of knew that he had graphic novels out there, but I never picked him up. Graphic novels really are not my thing, and I still, after reading this, are still really not my thing. But the illustrations are absolutely gorgeous, and the story is, of course, amazing, just like every other Jim Butcher book that I have ever read. So I flew through this. I literally read this in about an hour, so that was a really easy one to get out of the way. So one that I had planned on reading for the Reindeer Readathon and didn't was Hellfire's End, and that one was by Marco Raffala, I think it was. something like that. Anyway, I'm going to throw it up on the screen. But I did not end up reading that one because I just was not in the mood for it. I didn't DNF it or anything. I didn't even bother starting it. I just switched the book out for something else versus my original TBR video. So the next one that I didn't end up reading for the Reindeer Readathon that I had planned on was Johnny the Homicidal Maniac by Jhonen Vasquez. And I have been putting that repeatedly in TBR videos and I'm just not going to read it. It was like kind of a impulse buy. Like I read it when I was a teenager and I started reading really heavy again and I was like, oh, I really am gonna like this, and no, I tried reading it and it's just not for me anymore. But luckily enough, my niece saw it on my Instagram and she was interested, so I gave it to her as part of her Christmas present. You're welcome. So the next thing that I read, and this was on Kindle, was Sculpt Yourself by Savy. And Savy, if you didn't know, is another booktuber slash author tuber here, and she was also one of the hosts and my team leader for the Reindeer Readathon. And I ended up giving this book a 4 stars. I thought it was really good. It's definitely very progressive, contemporary, really not my thing. I thought it was very good, but I thought there was a lot of, you know, like feminism undertones and political undertones, and I generally don't like that in a book just because I'm reading books to escape reality. I don't really want to be brought back into it by a book. So yeah, it was really good. It's just not my thing. So I ended up giving that 4 stars just because it was well written and I did enjoy it. So the next one that I didn't end up reading was, of course, Sherlock Holmes. I have been putting this one on my freaking TBRs for I don't know how many readathons, hoping that I'm going to get through it because it is literally the oldest book on my bookshelf. So that one I didn't end up reading that again just because it is kind of heavy and it's got very old world language and descriptions the way that it was written, of course. So it's been kind of hard for me to get into, so I did not end up reading that one. So the next one that I did end up reading for this readathon was Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young, and this is about like a Viking-esque girl who ends up seeing her brother that died 5 years ago or something, and then she gets captured by the enemies. So it is all about her. It's like kind of like a coming of age story, kind of like finding out that your enemies maybe really aren't your enemies after all. Again, morally gray characters and fighting a common enemy. And it was a really good book. It really surprised me actually how much I enjoyed reading this book because I'm not really big on Vikings, I guess. I really haven't read a whole lot on Vikings. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, which I ended up giving 5 stars, and I read that for my science fiction book for the Reindeer Readathon. And honestly, I really loved it. Honestly, I gave it 5 stars, obviously. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't think I was going to. This is my very first Brandon Sanderson book. And I kid you not, I got it on Audible and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to listen to this one because I've got a credit and it's a science fiction, yada, yada, yada. So I listened to it and I was hooked. I mean, like from the first hour of listening to this book, I was so hooked. So as soon as I finished that one, I went ahead and got the next one, which is Starsight, also again by Brandon Sanderson. This one was not for a readathon. I just read it because it was good. It was really good, and I gave this one a 5 stars also. And I do believe that we are waiting for the 3rd book in the series, which is set to come out in 2020 maybe. So the next one that I read was, of course, Supernova. And this is the 3rd and final book in the Renegade series. Sorry, I just had another brain fart. I just had a brain fart earlier. So this is the 3rd and final book in the Renegade series, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. I think I'm lucky I didn't give this 3 stars. I thought about it, and I almost gave it 3 stars, and then I ended up giving it 4. I really enjoyed reading this. It was a continuation of the story. Things got deeper, things got darker, lots more things happened, lots more action, and then the epilogue. Oh my god, the epilogue. Please someone tell me that she's writing another freaking book to explain why would you include the epilogue in here. So the next one that I ended up reading was The Autumn Throne, and I already got rid of that book, so I'm going to throw a picture up on the screen that I read in physical format. Ended up giving it 5 stars. This is another book by Alison Weir, and this was for the magical readathon. So this prompt was to read a book with orange on the cover, and originally I was going to read The Priory of the Orange Tree, and then I decided that book was so chunky I didn't feel like reading it. So I ended up reading The Autumn Throne, and this is about Eleanor of Aquitaine, and this is later on in her life, and she's dealing with the death of a lot of her children, and she's dealing with her husband, who is kind of a douchebag, and then he ends up dying, so she's helping her kids rule the country, and chaos ensues, in other words. So you're seeing her at the end of her life, and this is again a historical fiction. It's a really good book. Alison Weir is an amazing historical fiction author. She weaves these characters into something so believable and so real that you just want to go back in time and just like be an observer. And that's what these books really feel like, is you being a fly on the wall, like back in the day. So I really ended up enjoying this book. There were a lot of boring parts, as with any historical fiction. There's a lot of boring, you know, stately functions and whatever, where nothing drastic happens. It just is the reality of the world. So, you know, you do have to contend with that, but I still enjoyed reading it. So the next one was an Audible original book, and that is The Christmas Pact, which it ended up being a 3-star book. It was only a couple hours long. This one I did read for fun, also because of course you get 2 free Audible originals every month. So that one was about 2 people. It's a romance book, if you can't tell. 2 people who fall in love. The girl's name is Riley Kennedy, and the guy's name is Kennedy Riley. So, of course, these 2 star-crossed lovers meet because their emails keep going to the wrong one, because they both work for the same company and their names are reversed. So, of course, they're going to get thrown together. So anyway, it encompasses a fake dating trope. She needs a date to go back home to her family because she feels like she's not good enough, and he needs a date to go back home to his brother's wedding. And of course, lots of chaos, lots of drama, you know. It just happens in romance books. So I did end up only giving this one a 3 stars, and that was because in the beginning I was very off-put by some of the language in there. It sounded more like, especially the way that the guy was talking about the girl, it sounded more like a teenage boy talking about some girl that he kind of sort of had a crush on and wanted to sleep with. And it was just like, I almost stopped listening to it because of a couple of the lines in there. And then I thought, okay, let's just get through this and see if he matures a little bit more. And it did end up getting there, but just so you know, if you're interested in listening to this, just keep pushing through. So the next one is The Music Mage, and that was on my Reindeer Readathon TBR, and I did not end up reading that. I ended up listening to the audiobook, and I listened to like the first 15 minutes, and I couldn't stand the voice. Sometimes the voice actors are so off-putting, so I couldn't stand the voice. I ended up returning that, and that's when I bought Starsight. So the next one that I read was To Best the Boys, and that was a 5-star read for me. That was also for the Magical Readathon as the book that I had bought most recently, which is obviously no longer the case now. But anyway, so To Best the Boys, I ended up giving 5 stars. It was so good, so good. It was a very, very fast read. It was very rich and detailed, and I felt like the characters came alive, and I really, really enjoyed it. Basically, it's about this town who has a very rich patron, and this patron has a labyrinth, and he does this labyrinth thing every year where all the boys from the town go into this labyrinth, and they have to complete these challenges, and then they get a scholarship to go to this like exclusive school. And so one of the girls from the town is like, her mom is sick, and she really wants to come up with a cure for her mom being sick. So she decides that she's going to dress up as a boy and enter the contest, and then her best friend does too. So of course, 2 girls in this contest with a bunch of boys, you know stuff's going down. So I thought it was really good, a really fast-paced read. I definitely think it is worth picking up, so definitely go check that one out. So the next one that I read was Truly Madly Guilty, and that one was by Liane Moriarty, and that one I actually buddy read with Berna over at Berna's Bookish Adventures, and I will link her channel down below. Also, we buddy read this, I think like the 2nd and 3rd week of December, and we both really enjoyed the book, and we were kind of caught up in the mystery of what was happening. Personally, for me, it took me longer. It took me about 150 pages to get into the book because they all start off really, really slow with her. She's a very slow burn author, and then she builds up, and she's like giving you this mystery piece by piece, and you're going, what happens next, and what happens next, and what happens next? And then there's usually this big reveal at the end. Well, in this book, I think it revealed it a little bit too early, and then at the very end you're left like, wait, what? That was the big surprise? Like, that's not glamorous or outlandish or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think we both enjoyed it. It just wasn't, it didn't quite live up to Big Little Lies. So yeah, if you want to read that book, just be warned. But that was a 4-star book for me. So the next one that I read, finally 2 months after it comes out, I finally read The Toll by Neal Shusterman. And this one, I am so disappointed. I ended up giving this 3 stars. This was supposed to be the epic conclusion to the Arc of the Scythe trilogy, and I just didn't. I was confused the whole time. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Where are there all these interludes? What are we talking about? What's this diary page doing here? Like, if you've read the first couple, you'll know what I'm talking about. Pieces where the Thunderhead is coming in and talking. And the ending, it just, honestly, it felt like, because there's the good guys and there's the bad guys. And it felt like the two never met. The good guys were not fighting the bad guys were not fighting the good guys. It was just like a jumble clusterfuck. And like the ending, it doesn't even make sense. It does not even make sense. Like, why? What is the point? So, needless to say, I was very, very disappointed by this because I really loved the first 2 books, except for the romance aspect. And then the romance aspect came back into this too, not very heavily, which it wasn't very heavy in either the first 2 books, but still, I'm just like, definitely was not as good as the first 2. So, yeah. So the next one that I read was The Diviners by Libba Bray. And this is about a girl, Evie O'Neill, who can touch things and she can divine things from these objects and tell you about people. So she gets into trouble in her hometown in Ohio, and she ends up having to go to New York to live with her uncle, which is pretty much exactly what she wants. But so she gets into trouble there because there is like a ghost going on, and he is like haunting the town, and her uncle and her uncle's assistant are like trying to figure out what's going on and battle this ghost, and of course chaos ensues. So this is the first book in the Diviner series. I have not continued on reading these. This was for the Magical Readathon. And I gave this 4 stars. I liked this book. It took me a little bit to get into it just because Evie at the beginning is very, very immature and very much like a teenager, bratty, rebellious, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, it wasn't my thing at first, but then I started reading more of it, and as her character arc kept going, she got more mature, and she really showed who she was, and I started to enjoy it. So I'm actually really, really excited to pick up the second book in this series. So the last and final book that I literally just finished today on the 30th of December is The Starlight C by Erin Morgenstern. And this book had me hooked from the very beginning. I will tell you what, I really got into this because it's about a guy who finds a book in a library and ends up reading about himself. And then he discovers this whole magical world that's like the greatest library home setting you could even think of. And it's showing you so much about this other place, and oh man, it was so good. And then we got to the last like 20 pages, and that's when I realized that we were not going to get a conclusion. Literally, it's like all this build up for no conclusion. It's like the story just ended and you're like, what? I'm so confused. What the hell just happened? I have no idea what's going on right now. And I'm still reeling from it. It's like there is so much detail and so many little nuances in here. I could read this book 10 times and still not know what the hell is going on, and still not have caught everything that is in this book because it is just so detailed. I think Erin Morgenstern is an amazing, amazing writer, just very rich and detailed, but it's almost too much. I did try reading The Night Circus and I ended up DNFing it because it was like this one, it just, too many details. So, too many details, too confusing, it just, I don't know. I'm still at a loss for words. So if anybody else has read this book and you can think of a better way to describe this or put this into words, please let me know down in the comments because I am still so confused by this. I did read this for the Magical Readathon, of course, and I did end up giving this 4 stars. That was all 16 books that I read for the month of December, so I'm going to be starting out 2020 strong, still going on with the Magical Readathon, and hopefully I can complete that. I did manage to complete all of the prompts for the Reindeer Readathon in about 3 weeks. So anyway, I guess that's all I got for you this time, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching my video. I upload every Wednesday and Saturday, and I would really love it if you would like, comment, and subscribe my videos. Have a great day.